Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, December 3rd, only 21 shopping days till Christmas, but happy holidays anyway to everyone. And we are joined by our panel of top local journalists, Jade Martinez-Pogue of the Newshawk, Ryan P. Cruz of The Independent, Jun Starkey of The Independent, and Josh Molina, international man of mystery and many platforms. Jade, we are all terrorized, those of us of a certain age anyway, by the what I like to call Omicron variant. What do we know about that, and where are we with COVID this week?
They're still working to study it right now, as far as like if it's more transmissible or if it has any effect on the vaccine efficacy. But I think it was Wednesday, they found the first case in the US, which was in California, in San Francisco. And I think I saw yesterday that there was another one detected in LA. So it's here now. There's still the travel restrictions to, I think, 8 countries in Africa. But COVID numbers locally, it's kind of all over the place. We'll go from like 24 one day to 80 the next day. I think testing has kind of been all over the place. There was a lot before Thanksgiving as people were preparing to travel, and then on Thanksgiving and over the holiday, it kind of died down a bit.
So we'll all hold our breath through the holiday. Do we know two things? One, are the vaccines effective against the Omicron variant, and can it be detected by the regular test, or is there a whole new test you have to do now?
I'm pretty sure it can be detected through the sequencing that they've been doing, like what they did for Delta and Alpha and all the other variants. As far as vaccines, I haven't heard anything that it is like the vaccines aren't as effective, but they are really ramping up, like encouraging people to get the boosters now that it's kind of beginning to circulate more.
Yeah, and only, I think I read in your piece, only 12% of the newly eligible 5 to was it 5 to 16, 5 to 15,
5 to 11,
5 to 11 cohort has done it. So more to come on that. Speaking of children, June, you see how I did that transition there. The Santa Barbara County Grand Jury put out a report on learning loss during the pandemic last year when schools were closed, and it was not a happy set of data. What did they say?
They just reported that there was a notable loss in especially math and English, that following that year when they assessed students, that there was a notable gap in the learning that wasn't present last year, or sorry, previous to the pandemic. But yeah, it was just, the study kind of just took into account that being online, not being able to have face-to-face interactions, not having that extra help where you might need it, and all of the distractions that come with trying to learn from your home while you have siblings, you have parents, there's a lot going on. And especially for younger children, this there was a gap in their learning. They didn't absorb as much information.
Is there has there been anything to suggest that this, either any of the school districts locally, acknowledge that it was a mistake to close the schools, or is everybody pretty hunkered down that it's fine despite this kind of findings about the impact of it?
I don't know about a mistake, but I think they acknowledge that it caused a lot of problems for students, and that going forward, they're going to do everything that they can to keep students in school. Yeah, I don't know if they would call it a mistake, like considering just the severity and the reaction and the risk that was posed by it. But I do know that they, from here on out, are going to try to keep students in school.
And then you had another story following on this leaked, I guess, survey of teachers in the Unified School District about Superintendent Hilda Maldonado. And Josh, you talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but I thought what was interesting in your story, June, was the head of the teachers union herself said, "Yeah, I don't have any problem with her. I find her very cooperative and stuff." And so sort of undercut, it seemed like she was trying to what the bottom line of the survey.
Yeah, I don't know if she was trying to undercut. I might have written it that way just because I included that, because I thought it was interesting that she herself, in her interactions with the superintendent, had felt that she was very attentive, very listening, but also that's one teacher. I think the survey itself suggested that most teachers in the district, or at least the ones that responded to the survey, didn't feel very connected to her. They didn't feel like they'd been seeing her. And she came in during the pandemic. It was a crisis, so it's understandable that she wasn't making visits and seeing everyone and popping in on the schools. But I think that Joyce herself might have had very good interactions with her, but she did tell me that she understands the reaction and the results of the survey, because she has been hearing that from teachers throughout the year.
Yeah, well, and I thought that Hilda's quote that saying, to them, I'm just a face in a Zoom box. I mean, yeah. I mean,
And that's all she's been to them.
Josh, do you want to pile on Hilda here a little bit?
Well,
you're mandatory.
I was surprised, Jerry.
Bashing.
I was surprised, Jerry, that you were actually suggesting that government would apologize for taking some action. Because that would certainly be a first. Obviously people, depending on the district, they closed early, they reopen late. It just, each case is a different scenario, but I think you're going to be waiting a long time to hear the government apologize for taking an action, unless they're told by, the governor or the head of the local Democratic Party to do it.
Or a PR consultant they hire for a lot of money. All right. Meanwhile, Ryan, you have been locked down in the trial of Pierre Haobsch in the notorious Han triple murder case. You had a very good wrap up of it. Just remind everyone what the outcome was, and then touch on a couple of the highlights or lowlights of the trial.
Yeah, so Judge Brian Hill, since it was a non-jury trial, a bench trial, he found Pierre Haobsch guilty on every count and all enhancements. Also, that was a lying in wait. It was murder for financial gain and multiple murders. So he's when his sentencing in January, he's going to be facing probably multiple life sentences and probably no chance of parole. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to follow it. It went around 5 weeks, and a witness testimony, and highlighted, of course, like he went on the stand, and that was one of the highlights of it. It was interesting to kind of, we got a glimpse of it when they showed this interrogation video, but when he was on the stand, it's really interesting to see how his mind worked, because in his mind he had created this free energy machine, and he had done all these things, and everybody was out to get him, and it was definitely exhausting to keep up with all his different different lies that he had.
So was your impression of him that he was a whack job, or that he was putting this on, or that this is just who he is?
I mean, there's definitely had to be a lot that went into making him the way he is. I think he had issues with insecurity. He wasn't sure about himself. He didn't graduate college. He thought he was very smart, so he had the side of himself that was really confident, and then he had this dark side that was he felt like he couldn't connect with women. He had to find women online and kind of pay them to hang for their time, and it's kind of seemed like a lot of these factors turned into him just in a place where he felt like he just had to take advantage of people, and he would scam people and use his intellect to make them believe that he could provide these services or provide this capital for this company, and he ultimately took advantage of people at the end of the day. And
yeah, the one thing I had missed in the trial, which I thought, and if anybody wants to catch up, Ryan's pieces in the current issue of the Indy that's out now, plenty of free parking. His hacks online, the way that he got into Dr. Han's bank accounts and stuff.
And that's something I've never seen it in a court case either, because he because he implanted this Spyrix software on Dr. Han's computer, he also did a dry run on his own laptop, but he left that running. So he had the investigators were able to piece keystroke by keystroke everything he did on his computer, everything along the way. And what he did is he told Dr. Han that we're gonna do this biz file together online, and he put all his info on there, his social security, anything that you would need. He had this document, and he was inputting that, and he got access to his bank account and attempted multiple transfers of money after he killed him.
Yeah. And then in case we forget, one of the other points that you recount is that it is sort of gruesome crime scene. I mean, this was horrible, horrible stuff, and including shooting a little girl.
That was the hardest thing to see, and especially she was shot 8 times when the Dr. Han and Jenny were shot 3 times each. So to see the photos, and he was on the stand, he would not look at the photos.
He wouldn't.
He would not look, and the prosecutors were like, "Can you identify if you see this?" And he was like, "I do, just out of the corner of my eye. It's hard for me to see." So I mean, it would be hard for anybody to see, but I'm sure he does not want to see the outcome of what he did.
And then, the other interesting thing, or really interesting thing, that it was a bench trial rather than a jury trial. And I guess what the stipulation was, if he could get a bench trial, then Joyce Dudley, the DA, would not seek the death penalty.
It was partially that there was kind of a COVID backlog during that time. And it was kind of a way to get this trial going, because had they done a jury trial also, they would have still been picking jurors probably now, here in the 5th week or 6th week of the trial. So it was kind of an agreement that had to do with, it took all of those different things into account, but it did take the death penalty off the table. And, it would have been Joyce Dudley's first death penalty, and who knows if it would have gone through, because, the process, California hasn't killed somebody in some time. So it would have been.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then Josh, I guess you have the scoop of the week with the big fight in Old Town Goleta over pickleball, which our producer Hap Freund is very fond of, and I'm sure has fired off a number of thoughtful emails to you about. But can you kind of recap that for people who might have missed it?
Yeah, Jerry, and you should refer to me as that every week. The man with the scoop of the week. I like that. Especially when it's.
We're going to get back. I actually think Jade had the scoop of the week, but we'll get back to that in a second. Go ahead.
Especially when it's such an important topic as pickleball. So yeah, apparently pickleball.
The average age of my audience. Come on.
Yeah, I'm about to offend 213 people right now. Okay, so pickleball is super popular. It's a fast-growing sport. There's not enough place to play it. There's tension between pickleball players who play at tennis courts. Tennis players show up. Hey, what's going on? It's pickleball. That sort of has been the drama the last couple of years. Pickleball is played on a smaller court. It's like ping pong, except you're standing on the court and you hit a wiffle ball with a paddle. So what the Goleta Valley Community Center wants to do is transform 5 basketball and tennis courts into pickleball courts. 4 of them would be pickleball only, and 1 of them would be multi-purpose. So that's 5 total, 5 where it's pickleball. 1 of them, it could be also basketball. And the reason is they're saying there's not enough places to play pickleball. A whole group of pickleball professionals have said, we will raise the money. They put a GoFundMe out. They raised $12,000 to restore the court.
Including the director, right, of the community center?
Correct. The acting general manager, Charlie Johnson, is big supporter of this. And they raised money, and what they want to do is be able to charge $60 annually for the whole year to be able to reserve a fee, reserve a court anytime, or do a $2 drop-in. Okay, so it sounds good, great. Let's have more recreation. They want to do this in Old Town Goleta, which is right in the heart of Goleta's working class Latino mostly neighborhoods. And it's right in the parking lot of the Goleta Valley Boys and Girls Club. So the big debate is, what's the best way to use these courts? The pickleball contingent says nobody uses those basketball courts. They've been unused. They just sort of sit there. Till the pickleball people came and rescued Old Town Goleta and rescued these courts. It's like the pickleball people discovered Old Town Goleta. And now we're going to make it a place for recreation for people who live in Montecito,
Who
Santa
are
Barbara.
overwhelmingly
Goleta.
older and white and well off, correct?
Well, when I was there, that would fit the description of the people who were playing for sure. So they're saying, hey, nobody uses these courts. Well, that's not true. Okay. I don't know what data they have, if it's just sort of anecdotal. Those courts are used as overflow courts for the Boys and Girls Club. If the gym is taken, they say, go practice on the basketball courts. Okay. It's a very common thing. It's also a place for pickup basketball in the neighborhood. Now, they're certainly not as used as much as the pickleball people use them, because the pickleball people can play apparently
Well,
like
they're all
gamers
retired. That's
day
why.
and night,
Nothing else
right?
to do except
So-
watch
so the-
newsmakers.
The big debate is, should we allow this group to be able to essentially, pay for these courts and be able to use them pretty much at their will when they want to? Or should we look at what's a better use for everybody in this area? The pickleball people will say, what are you talking about? We're leaving a court. One court is for basketball. What are you talking about? Okay. So again, it's all a matter of perspective. But if you are somebody who plays basketball and, there's new generations all the time growing up wanting to play, and you go there and you see 4 pickleball and 1 basketball, you might sort of feel like,
Well, and
you're
there
a
are-
minority in
Right.
that context.
And some, in your piece, I believe you also quoted someone who, looking at it through an equity lens, so there's a kind of racism in this, yes?
Well, there's an implication of elitism and privilege, okay? There are people who I interviewed, and there are people who said at the Parks and Recreation Commission, I never go to Old Town. And now I go to Old Town all the time. It's like they discovered it, okay? It's like, oh, Old Town needs people from the outside to come in and say, oh, it's not actually that bad of a place after all. We can play pickleball here. So there's there's that layer of what's happening to it. And yes, the person said, because what happened was Charlie Johnson said, I hope you don't think that I'm being elitist at all. And the Commissioner Courtney Walton said, well, you don't have to be intentional to be elitist. Elitism can be baked into systems and structures. And I think that's really the whole conversation. Not a lot of people are intentionally elitist these days. They are by default, by where they assume the conversation should start.
All right, and this is all going to end up before the city council.
Goleta City Council. Yeah, I'd be interested in Ryan's perspective as an Old Town Goleta dude, at times.
Are
did
you
ever
an
play
Old
basketball?
Town Goleta dude, Ryan?
You ever played basketball there,
I'm
Ryan?
Goleta.
or-
I did grow up in the Goleta Boys and Girls Club, and like you said, that is used for basketball overflow and pickup basketball. And there is a aspect of it where when you get to saying I discovered Old Town or oh now I can go there, you got to kind of think of the other side. What is that saying? Is that saying why wouldn't you go there before? And that's kind of highlighting that. I mean, besides, they do have the other skate park, and that's a great park they have over there. But besides that, there isn't a lot in the Old Town for people to go and gather at. And at one point, it's good to have people going there and having community, but which community is being invited? And
One other thing too, one of the Parks and
Real quick.
Recreation Commissioners said, hey, there's a basketball court on every elementary school in Goleta. There are no elementary schools in Old Town Goleta, first of all. So right there is an assumption, right? If you live there, how do you get to an elementary school? There's none nearby, okay?
Yeah.
In fact, Goleta Valley Center was the first elementary school.
Is
that got
the
converted.
community
So-
center, I should know this, but I don't, is the community center a government operation or is it a nonprofit?
No, the city owns it. They took it over a few years ago. So,
All right.
but it's managed by this group and it has a board. So yeah, and no offense to the pickleball players, pickleball is fun. I'm just framing the debate in the context. It's not my
Yeah, I'm just
personal
a
opinion.
reporter. Yeah. All right, Jade. Speaking of elitists, Charles Munger, the 165-year-old partner of Warren Buffett, of course, has this proposal for the Dormzilla at UCSB, and you did a very smart story, I thought. Interviewing students who were current and former residents of not quite a parallel, but a similar dorm at the University of Michigan. And it didn't sound like it was a very happy experience overall.
Yeah, so I was actually interested. I ended up talking to 4 people. They were all actually former residents, so no one who was currently living there. And it was weird because it wasn't as negative as I was expecting it to be. It obviously still was, but I was expecting like people to just dish on the windows and say all this, you know, all the criticism that people in Santa Barbara have been saying. But a lot of the people I talked to, they weren't happy with it. They talked about the windows, you know, hurting their mental health and how
Right. A number of people that developed acute depression, it sounded like.
This one of the girls I talked to, I mentioned it in my story. She was in a windowless room her first year, and she got a note from her psychiatrist saying that she had seasonal depression, and then they were able to move her to a different room that had windows for her next 2 years. But there was a lot of interesting aspects of what they had to say. First off, like Munger there had an essay-based application process, which
That was weird.
I found so weird. Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
You know how many words the essay had to be?
They said it was like a few paragraphs. I'm not sure, but I guess that was really focused on making sure people of different majors, of different races, different cultures could live together, and that they wanted that type of environment. But then multiple people that I spoke to said that it created this elitist process, and people just wanted to live in this building because it had all these amenities, a movie theater, a rooftop running track, and they would do anything to get in there.
But the thing that struck me from your piece was that they all said, you know, these community areas where everybody's supposed to gather and it didn't work. I mean, people didn't use it. People went there to study because it was so quiet.
And I think that's interesting because, you know, that's what a lot of people have said about UCSB's Munger, is that, you know, people aren't meant to just stay in their room. They're supposed to go out and use these amenities and these common spaces because they're so great. But that doesn't really happen. And I imagine, I mean, I don't know much about the University of Michigan environment or student culture, but just having gone to UCSB, like, I don't think people are going to want to hang out in the lounge area of a dorm instead of going to the beach or, you know, going to a party on DP. Like, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work to me, especially.
Yeah, and then yet another prominent group of architects, or a group of prominent architects, turned thumbs down on it too. What was that about?
Yeah, so a group of 8 former campus architects from 8 different campuses, UC campuses. I think the only 2 where there wasn't campus representation was Davis and Santa Barbara. But all the other campuses sent a letter to the UC president, Michael Drake, just saying that the building doesn't align with the UC's values. It's going to set like a bad precedent for housing and have a ripple down effect on, you know, different like dorm buildings to come. A lot of the same stuff that we've seen from, you know, AIA complaints and all of that. But
all right, very good. Well, we got to go. Thank you to Jade Martinez-Pogue and Ryan P. Cruz, Jun Starkey, and Josh Molina. Josh, having been scooped on the Mike Eliason interview, who have you got on the podcast this week?
Good, Jerry. How many times I have to tell you?
By Newsmakers, I should say. What?
I don't know how many times I have to tell you, just because you have it doesn't mean that I wanted it. Okay.
Oh my
So
God.
it's not a big deal. I've got Lanny Evanstein on my
Oh, that's
podcast.
good,
and
yeah.
We're going to talk about county redistricting maps and all things politics. And I'm sure Hilda Maldonado will come up too, just for you, Jerry.
You know, and Jade, you wrote about those three real quick redistricting plans that are now still viable. The third one is actually Lanny's plan. I mean, he's promoted that idea, but I don't think anybody's stated that that is in fact the plan that he kind of drew up. So, Josh, I'm sure you'll press him on why he prefers that one. Again, all right. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
Thanks. Bye.